Welcome to HFY Stories. Please subscribe to the channel. Your one click means the world to me. The bunker door struck its frame with a force that rattled dust from the ceiling. Above 200 frightened students, one surviving security screen flickered between static and a corridor where three armored raiders were moving steadily closer. Valora then pressed herself into a corner, folding her tentacles beneath her as tightly as she could. The feed died before anyone learned what happened next. 20 minutes earlier, she had been worrying about an exam. Valora preferred predictable lectures, average marks, and safe routines. During 3 cycles at the Galactic Institutes of Higher Learning, she had seen laboratories catch fire, professors misuse teleporters, and one cafeteria disaster involving a Plaxian egg. Those were acceptable emergencies. Humans were not. They had joined the Galactic Council only 17 planetary rotations earlier, and most species still treated them as either curiosities or threat assessments. Earth was a death world, punishing gravity, violent weather, and native life shaped to bite, poison, crush, infect, or consume. Yet Mira Kane, the human 3 rows ahead of Valora in advanced theoretical biology, seemed offensively ordinary. She tied back her dark hair, took notes on paper, completed assignments on time, and asked careful questions about exospecies anatomy. Then the invasion alarm sounded. A low pulse rolled through the classroom. Red emergency lamps replaced the normal white lighting. Professor Telwyn froze beside a diagram of methane breather lungs. Hostile breach confirmed, the automated system announced. All personnel proceed to hardened shelter zones. The room exploded into motion. Students shoved toward the exits. Phyrexians hardened their outer layers. Binary fear pheromones flooded the air. Valora grabbed her data pad and joined the rush. Behind her came a crack like a snapped support beam. She turned. Mira was standing over 2 halves of her desk. The composite surface had been rated to survive impacts that would hospitalize most students. Mira stared at her own hands for half a second, breathing fast, then looked at the door. "Everybody out," she said. "Move while the corridor is still clear." Professor Telwyn tried to regain control. "Miss Kane, the evacuation protocol requires." Mira crossed to the emergency weapons cabinet and drove her fist into the locking assembly. Metal buckled inward. The second strike tore the mechanism loose. The room stopped. Mira pulled out a plasma rifle, checked its charge, took 2 more weapons, and slung them across her shoulders. "Professor, take them downstairs," she said. "Seal the shelter and verify anyone who asks to enter. You are not authorized to engage an invading force." "I'm not asking for authorization." A student near the rear blurted, "You're a biology student." Mira looked toward him, red light caught in her eyes. "On Earth, yes," she said. "Right now, I'm the person in this room best built for what's outside." That was enough. Professor Telwyn began driving the class toward the evacuation route. Valora let herself be carried with them, but at the turn to the stairwell, she looked back. Mira stepped into the corridor alone, rifle raised. Now inside the bunker, camera 17 returned. A figure ran into view. Valora recognized the ponytail first. "Is that the human?" someone whispered. "Yes." "What is she doing?" Valora watched Mira flatten behind a structural brace and angle the rifle toward the far end of the corridor. "She's going toward them." 3 Vorthorian raiders entered the frame. Heavy armor, military weapons, no hesitation. Mira fired first. The lead raider's shield flashed and failed. He dropped. The other 2 scattered, plasma burning black marks across the wall. Mira had already moved. She slid low behind another support, fired at an exposed leg joint, and sent a second attacker crashing down. The third threw a grenade. White light swallowed the screen. Several students screamed. When the image returned, the floor was cratered. Mira was gone. 1 heartbeat. 2. Then she dropped from the overhead service structure onto the raider's back. Her arm locked under his throat. He staggered, struck the wall, clawed at her sleeve. She stayed attached until his knees folded. Mira landed beside him, retrieved her rifle, and disappeared down the corridor. The screen returned to static. A Eflin student whispered, "That creature is insane." Valora could still hear the desk breaking. "No," she said, "she's human." They remained sealed underground for 6 hours. Fragmentary updates revealed the attackers were a raiding force targeting research labs and preserved biological material. Security teams fought through several sections of the station. So did the humans. 17 human students had been present when the breach began. All 17 had taken action. By the time station security re-established control, the human students had neutralized more than half the raiders encountered inside the academic sectors. When the all-clear finally sounded, Valora returned to the biology wing. Chairs lay overturned. Wall panels were scorched. Mira's broken desk remained where it had fallen. Professor Telwyn stood beside it. "Security wants to commend the humans," he said. Valora looked toward the corridor. "Where is Mira?" "Medical bay. Burns, bruises, nothing serious." He paused. "She found 5 more raiders after leaving us." Valora's stomach tightened. 5. None remained a threat. He lifted one half of the desk, then set it down. "I used to think Deathworld classification described a place," he said. "Today I realized it also describes what that place teaches its inhabitants." Valora said nothing. The next morning, the repaired classroom filled early. When Mira entered, every conversation stopped. She had a bandage around one forearm and a bruise along her cheek. Otherwise, she looked exactly as she had the day before. She sat, opened the same paper notebook, and frowned at the room. "Why is everyone staring?" One student finally said, "We heard what you did." Mira shrugged. "There were armed people trying to reach civilian labs. I stopped some of them." 5, another said. 4 who kept fighting, Mira replied. "The last one surrendered." Professor Telwyn arrived before the questions multiplied. He set down his data pad. "The administration has asked us to discuss yesterday's response. Lives were unquestionably saved. There are also concerns about the degree of force used." Mira's chair creaked under her grip. "You think we should have waited?" "I think procedures exist for a reason. Procedures work when the threat behaves according to the assumptions behind them," she said. "Those raiders had military weapons and a target list." "How do you know that?" "Because one of them told me after he surrendered." Telwyn's middle eye narrowed. "You questioned a prisoner." "I asked what they wanted." He decided answering was sensible. Whispers filled the room. Valora raised one tentacle. "Professor, perhaps the disagreement is not about what happened. It is about what each species considers acceptable before action becomes necessary." Mira turned toward her. Valora continued, more carefully. "Most of us are taught that physical force means every other option failed. Humans seem to treat controlled force as one option among several." Mira nodded. "That's closer." Someone muttered, "Barbaric." Mira's expression hardened. "We teach children not to start fights," she said. "We also teach them that refusing to resist can reward the person hurting them. Earth did not train us to assume safety. It trained us to notice when safety is already gone." The room went still. Professor Telwyn eventually redirected the class to methane-based symbiosis, but Valora barely heard the lecture. Afterward, she approached Mira. "Are all humans like you?" Mira zipped her bag closed. "No, some freeze, some run. Some refuse violence completely. We're individuals." But most would have done something. Mira considered that. Most would try. A week later, the Institute held a formal commendation ceremony. Emergency crews were recognized. Then the 17 human students were called forward. Mira accepted the applause like someone enduring bad weather. Afterward, Valora found her beside a viewport, alone. "You dislike that," Valora said. "I'd rather take another exam." They watched shuttle lights drift across the glass. Valora folded 2 tentacles behind her. "Before the breach, I was afraid of you. I noticed. I am still afraid of you sometimes." Mira laughed softly. "But now I think I understand the fear. You are dangerous in a controlled way, like equipment designed for emergencies." Mira raised an eyebrow. "Did you just compare me to emergency equipment?" "I meant it respectfully. I've heard worse." Valora almost left it there. Then Mira's smile faded. "My hands were shaking yesterday," she said. Valora turned. Mira kept looking through the viewport. Every corridor, every time I heard footsteps, every time I had to move before I knew what was around the corner, I was scared the entire time. You did not appear afraid. I was terrified. That unsettled Valora more than the fight footage had. Then why did you keep going? Mira rubbed a thumb against the bandage on her arm. Because fear tells you danger is real. It doesn't tell you what you have to do about it. Valora waited. I wanted to hide, Mira said, but there were students behind locked doors who couldn't fight those raiders, so I kept moving. You could have died. Yes. The word carried no drama. Mira finally looked at her. I don't think courage is feeling nothing. I think it's being afraid, understanding the cost, and still choosing who you want to be when the cost arrives. For several seconds, the only sound was the ventilation system. Valora looked at the human who had shattered a reinforced desk, hunted armored raiders, and then admitted she had wanted to run. I am glad you were here, she said. Mira's mouth curved. That might be humanity's best review so far. The semester resumed. Valora chose Deathworld Psychology for her final paper. Professor Telwyn gave her the highest mark she had ever received and noted that humans did not consider their own behavior extraordinary. 2 cycles later, Mira graduated at the top of her class and entered xenobiology, eventually joining the Galactic Council's crisis response teams. Valora stayed in contact with her across research postings and conferences. Years later, at one such conference, Valora arrived early to an empty lecture room. A paper notebook rested on the front desk. Beside it sat a reinforced data terminal carrying a small maintenance label, human-rated fixture. Valora touched the edge of the desk, tested its weight, and sat down. A moment later, the door opened. Mira walked in, saw Valora's hand still resting on the reinforced surface, and started laughing before either of them said a word.